Kylie, I've come to you today because I went to the doctor and I'm really angry with him because he wouldn't believe what I had to say about my church. He was just so rude to me. I believe that God can cure my son. Why shouldn't I believe that?
Look, Jill, you've got every right to believe what you believe, and I think we all have different reasons why our person may become sick, but yours is legitimate as it is mine. But at the same time, I don't think the doctor should have spoken to you like that. I think in his profession, I think he should have an open mind, and your belief is very strong. But each one of us sees it differently. But in this world, unless we understand how other people feel and think, particularly with mental illness, I think this is something that is so difficult to understand that there are a lot of people who find solace or ways through their own beliefs and religions.
So I'm going to take my son to the church because I think he's got a demon.
Right. Look, you can do that. You can do that, but also understand that from the knowledge that you're speaking to me now, and I've had many years of working with families, there's a lot to understand that the behaviours that he's displaying at the moment are sometimes caused by the inability of the brain to manage. Something goes wrong, and a lot of us don't really understand what happens in the brain, that sometimes the messages don't go through, and there's a lot of research that needs to be done. But if it makes you comfortable to go and speak with your church leader, then I can't stop you. That's how you feel, and I respect what you feel. But remember, there are other options as well that are important for you to think about.
And what are they?
Well, I think there are options of learning, reading, maybe at first searching to find out what information is available around, modern information. There are books written about these illnesses that you could think about and study and read. And you perhaps might be able to change your medical doctor, maybe go to a psychologist, for example, and talk about issues to do with behaviour. Because you're right, some behaviours are demonic. They really are not natural behaviours. But from my own reading, the behaviours that I saw in my own son were behaviours that were so strange that I just felt something more than what he is doing is causing these. And I really have got a feeling that there are things happening in the brain that have gone wrong, just like something happens in your lungs when you have lung cancer. Something goes wrong in your lungs. That's how I would interpret it, but I wouldn't say to you, don't go to your church.
But you're saying he might be sick.
I'm saying that, but that's something that you need to think about and make a judgment. And it could well be, if you have an understanding cleric or pastor, whoever is in your church that you would go to, may say that to you as well. He may read the scriptures to you, but if he's a man of intelligence and well-read, he may suggest to you that it would be good to discuss his symptoms with a professional. So you have to make a judgment, because in the end you're looking for the best for your child.
And if I wanted to speak to a professional, what does that mean?
Well, there are professionals, for example, in the medical field, in the psychological field, who have training in understanding. There's a lot of research that is now available, and we can also obtain that research if we ask in the right places, where it has now shown that when some of our people with these behaviours, research has been done with the different equipment that we have today, which shows activity in the brain that isn't when the person doesn't show these behaviours. And I know there was one particular research project that I saw on the ABC television program many years ago on Catalyst, where it was actually describing that researchers had now observed the little part of the brain called the amygdala, and how that a person who has symptoms of paranoia, that is, the person sees things outside, or thinks ASIO's chasing them, or they think there's a man outside with a gun going to shoot them, but doesn't exist. We don't see it, but that person does. That they have done some research and shown that the person who has the symptom, there are changes in the shape of the amygdala, or something to that. I can't remember exactly all the details, but even this is going back about 10 years that I saw this program, but I think now there's even more research starting with all these kinds of research equipment that we have, that is showing that these behaviours are showing signs in the brain changing, and that's why some of these neurotransmitters aren't sending the right messages. It's complex for me. I'm not a medical person, but I've read enough to understand and to simplify and to notice from my own son's behaviours and others' families, relatives who have behaviours of these kinds, that something happens and changes in the brain. And remember, the brain is an organ of our body, like our heart is. Like when you have a blocked valve in your heart, you can't breathe the same. So that's how I would sort of guide you.
So Kylie, where should I go?
Well, we can look up, I think your first place would be to go to your GP if you're not happy with that particular GP, because he was so adamant about the answer he gave you, which I thought was really wrong. I wouldn't agree with the way he spoke to you. I would search for another GP and tell him and describe the symptoms to him. Try not using too much language, be fairly direct, and say to him, could you guide me somebody who would give me a diagnosis or a help for my boy?